Welcome to the PM Box webcast. My name is Neil Stolovitsky, and in today's session I will be talking about choosing cloud PPM, looking at the differences between software as a service and installed options offered up by the marketplace. For today's agenda, I will be covering the following topics. First, we will be looking at the confusion around cloud and how to define cloud computing. Then we will be also discussing the differences between the software as a service options and the installed options and the benefits. We will also be looking at project portfolio management and how it's delivered through the cloud and the benefits you can get from a PPM solution in the cloud. And finally, I will leave you with a checklist that will help you determine whether your organization is ready to adopt a cloud PPM solution for your own needs. So to get things started, let's start off with clarifying cloud computing and having a good understanding of the business and technology models. So for many organizations, cloud computing is equated with software as a service, which is just simply not true. The reality is cloud is way more than that. It really is an internet platform that allows software vendors to develop and leverage the internet for their enterprise applications. And as a result of that, there have been many different business models that have fallen out of that in terms of how end users or buyers of technology can leverage this new technology. The most common, of course, is software as a service, where you don't require any infrastructure. You just log on over the web, access your enterprise application, and start working. The reality is you don't necessarily need to have a software as a service option in order to leverage the cloud. It must be understood that the cloud is really a technology platform and can be delivered in multiple options. So from a technology point of view, it's important to point out that there are different ways to leverage the cloud, whether it's a private internal cloud that sits on your own servers, a public cloud that's purely over the web, and a hybrid cloud, which is a mixture of both. In addition to that, the cloud, from a business model perspective, can be accessed in many, many different ways, which the most popular one that you hear the most in the marketplace is obviously software as a service or a subscription model where you go online and you just pay a monthly or annual fee, and there's no impact on or footprint on your own infrastructure. But there are other ways to leverage the cloud, like platform as a service or infrastructure as a service as well. And you could even purchase applications and build your own cloud environment behind the four walls of your organization. So to understand the world of cloud computing, it really is important that you make a distinction between both the technology models and the business models available in the marketplace. So for organizations looking to move forward with a cloud solution, really at the end of the day, there's really two primary models you should be looking at. It's either software as a service or a lease model, or an installed model, which is typically purchased. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on and showing you the differences between both of these models when you're looking at cloud-based solutions during your evaluation of new technology. So this gives you a good idea of the differences between a software as a service model and an installed purchase model. And there's a number of criteria you should take into consideration when comparing both of these models. For software as a service, it's lease, it's rent. There's no ownership, where, of course, when you're purchasing it, there is an ownership of that. And at the end of the day, that makes a difference in terms of your initial investment. So, of course, with software as a service, when it comes to maintenance, because it's a lease model, it's included, where for the installed and purchase model, typically you're going to have to purchase additional maintenance, and it's going to be a percentage of your licenses fee. Security, that's always a concern, especially when you're looking at both models, especially the installed model, which is behind your firewall, and there's less of an issue, where in the software as a service model, it's typically sitting in a data center by a third party. But at the end of the day, many cases, the third party tends to even be more secure than what you would imagine that you have behind your own four walls. When it comes to upgrades, it's typically included in the SaaS model. Everything is included. It's a one-stop shop when you're moving forward with software as a service. And again, within the installed model, unless you get your maintenance agreement as part of your package, it may not be included. Now, from a data model perspective, software as a service is typically more in a multi-tenant environment where you're sharing the data model. But there are cases where you can actually have a lease option where it's dedicated and it is a single instance that's running on a server in the data center, where if it's going to be your own internal cloud, it's going to be a single instance behind your own firewall. From a browser perspective, these things really don't matter, whether it's installed behind your firewall or in a data center or through a software as a service or through a purchase model. They're all web-based applications, and they typically support all the same web browsers. However, from an investment perspective, that's where you're going to see the difference. So for software as a service, the advantage is a low upfront cost. It's an annual fee. It's not capital expenditure, right? Where the installed option, it's higher upfront costs and there's a one-time fee. But if you look at over a 3 to 5 year investment, in many cases, an installed option may be more affordable or provide a better ROI than the software as a service option. But it all depends on your infrastructure and if that's something you want to support internally. Legally, less issues tend to happen with the installed option just because there's a transaction that happens and then you have ownership, where the legal implications for software as a service are a little bit different because you're leasing it, and you really have to make sure that it's well defined in the SLA. And from an implementation perspective, what we're seeing from software as a service is a shorter cycle to implement, to get up and running, to be trained, because again, everything's done on the end of the vendor, and it's more of a training and configuration that requires, where installed has to adapt to your own infrastructure and it may get more complex. And finally, from an integration perspective, in the early years, software as a service wasn't as good, was more limited, and it tends to be more flexible when it's behind your firewall. But today, I think that's less of an issue, just because of the advances that a lot of the software as a service vendors have provided with the new platforms in the last number of years or so. So now that we have a good understanding of the difference between the different models, it's important to understand it within the context of the project and portfolio management world, and the benefits of having a cloud-based PPM that's going to accommodate the needs of today's knowledge workers. So for cloud-based PPM, here are some of the benefits. It's very important to point out that most people are looking for this type of solution because they're looking for a common platform that they can not only share internally with their own stakeholders and teams, but externally with their own customers. And the cloud offers that standard platform that's easy to share and deliver and to manage, and everything around project and portfolio management methodology or processes that you have in place. Also, when it comes to collaboration, it's a much better way to collaborate just because it's web-based and access to that information is much easier. The sharing information, communicating, integrating social collaboration or social media tools is much simpler to do with a cloud-based offering as well. Another reason what we're seeing is one of the bigger benefits is visibility, right? So again, cloud offers the visibility to all your stakeholders instantaneously. You just log online and you have access to that information based on your profile. And obviously that ties into the easier access information. And finally, it provides you with a central repository of all your project information and documents easily accessible over the web. And this has become increasingly popular to go the cloud route just because of the reality of the project management world, where teams are dispersed and working remotely, and the cloud is a standard platform, and in fact an ideal platform to improve and streamline your best practices across your different teams in different regions and different time zones and different languages and so forth. So to wrap things up, what I'm going to leave you with is a checklist to see if you are ready for cloud-based project and portfolio management software. So here are some of the things that you may want to ask yourself and check them off in order to have a good understanding if you're ready for this new technology. Does your organization leverage the cloud today? So that's the first question you should be asking yourself. If you're using cloud-based solutions or web-based solutions, introducing a PPM solution that's cloud-based will be much simpler, and there'll be less hurdles for adoption. Do you have a project governance framework in place? So having the business side in order, the process side in order, always makes it easier when you're moving to a PPM solution, whether it's cloud-based or not. So that's something that's important to consider. Are you leveraging any industry best practices? Again, this is another way that's going to ensure that you have the right framework in place, the right best practices in place, so that when you want to move forward with a cloud-based solution, that's one less hurdle that you have to worry about. Do you work with dispersed and remote project teams? Are mobile devices important to your workforce? Again, having that type of environment, which is increasingly becoming more and more popular within organizations, or a more and more common way of working with other project teams, will make it easier for your adoption of the cloud-based PPM solution. It is more in line with the way you're working today. Also, looking at your collaboration and document sharing capabilities is also something to consider. If it's sophisticated, it's mature, you're already using web-based applications to share this information, it's just taking that information to the next level with a cloud-based PPM solution. And there's always, of course, the change management question. Are you ready for this change? Many organizations are working in a certain fashion, and there's a recipe to their success. Introducing a new solution may not be the right answer, or the timing is just not there. So that's something you may have to consider as well. I want to thank you very much for taking the time for listening to this presentation today, and we welcome any feedback or comments that you have. You could always visit my blog at pmbox.geniusinsight.com. If you want to learn more about Genius Insight as an organization, you can go to www.geniusinsight.com.